What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video. Today we are starting the AFC South. Now, obviously, there's far less games to commentate on than obviously it was with like the first divisions because some of these games have already been decided. If you guys are new to this series, you'll see that there's already stuff filled in. You'll be like, "What the hell's all that about?" All of this is keeping updated with every single other team that I've done so far. So I'm not gonna be able to be like, oh well, actually it's that type of record. Change that one in the past. That's some bullshit. What we pick is what we pick, regardless if we're actually doing this team or not. So let's look at the Indianapolis Colts, a very very interesting team because it is all dependent on whether Phillip Rivers is actually declining the way he looked last year. Now, I completely disagree with this. So obviously we're going to look at Phillip Rivers right now. Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, super talented. I've always really liked watching him play. It's unfortunate that he chokes a lot, but I have to blame the Chargers organization. I mean, they're just not a very good, very healthy organization. They don't care about their offensive line. They obviously care about receiving weapons, but not the ability to protect the guy who throws to those receiving weapons. So, slight problem with the Chargers there, their organization. I think that, hey, if my aspirations come true, maybe I can own them one day and actually turn that ship around because that is completely ass. But yeah, Indianapolis is a far different culture than that. I think Phillip Rivers has a big, bright spot here because he has something he's never had before, an offensive line. So we're going to go back to the skill positions in a second. The highlight of this entire team right now is their offensive line. Quentin Nelson, Costanzo, you have Kelly, you have Braden Smith. I forgot who their center was, but who cares? I think Des Kelly's their center, but who cares? They have an amazing offensive line. They went from worst to first in 1 year just because they got Braden Smith and they also got Quentin Nelson in the same draft. Amazing job by this organization to completely turn around their draft philosophy and just go to protect their quarterback. And they've been struggling. They've been struggling a bit. They have had ever since Andrew Luck retired, which is really unfortunate. This team was Super Bowl contenders every year with Andrew Luck at the helm. They've had a little bit of a hard time. So they got rid of Jacoby Brissett. And actually, they haven't gotten rid of Jacoby yet. I'm pretty sure they gave him a 2-year, $25 million deal. So he's sitting on the bench. So worst case scenario, if Phillip retires next year, they have somebody to take over. So Jacoby just wasn't the answer there, even though I think he's underrated big time. I think he's a great game manager for how he's looked, how he's viewed. He's obviously not that great. But running backs, this is a very interesting part of the team. Marlon Mack has been very consistent, very solid, not a super huge game changer, but very consistent, and people actually fear him in the NFL. I've heard certain D linemen say that he's their most feared running back to go up against. So, you gain respect from your peers for how well you play, not for just your reputation. You gain your reputation. You don't just have one. Now they have Jonathan Taylor taken in the second round. Kind of insane here, guys. Did not see this one coming. Jonathan Taylor is he's a big question mark when in terms of ball carrying because he fumbles a lot, but insane ability if he's able to fix that up. He is an amazing runner, one of the most jaw-dropping athletes I've ever seen in my entire life. So good at Wisconsin. But let's looking at their draft. Their first round pick theoretically was for DeForest Buckner, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's great. And then let's go and look at the wide receiver group. Second round, they got Michael Pittman Jr. from my high school, Rep Oaks Christian. Amazing target, really good idea. Somebody who's fast, tall, good hands. Probably top 2 in the entire class with about probably undisputably top 3. Just really solid wide receiver overall, and a great pairing with T.Y. Hilton, a more small route runner, deep threat type. T.Y. is extremely underrated nowadays. He's not even talked about as a top 15 wide receiver, and I think that he can be up there in the top 10. Really solid talent here in Indianapolis. Tight end, a little bit lackluster ever since they lost Eric Ebron to my Steelers, but They'll find a way to patch it up. I mean, they still have Jack Doyle there, and he had a damn good time with Andrew Luck. So he has talent. Going to the defensive side, defensive line used to be their big fault, but they have DeForest Buckner now, and then they still have Jabal Sheard coming off the edge, and they have Kamoko Toure. They have some young talent in there, and they have some older dudes, some older veterans, and then they got a stud on the interior. So defensive line, they've improved a lot, and then linebackers, they're still working on that, but Darius Leonard, big standout star, Division II player, taken the second round a couple years ago, big standout star. He's definitely there for the long haul. And then there really isn't much else there. That's the problem. So they need to continue to develop that. But I think that in a couple drafts' time, they'll be able to just fill in the gaps. Secondary, they have like Pierre Desir, if I'm not mistaken. They have a couple pieces there, but there's nothing really insane in that secondary apart from Malik Hooker. Oh my goodness, I love this guy from The Ohio State University. He is such a beast, guys. He just if you saw last year, he had a one-hand pick where the ball was just like flying, a dart, and he just went like this and it stuck in his hand. Like, insane player. It's too bad he gets injured too often, but really solid overall. I think this team has a lot of potential. I mean, I know they have Rocky Ascent in the secondary, so he's developing too. But overall, this team the secondary is their biggest weakness right now. And they still have some key pieces in there. So this team is very poised for a Super Bowl. I think they can be Super Bowl ready right now. So let's look at it. Week 1, Indy goes to Jacksonville. I'm giving this one to Indy. Jacksonville's offensive line, even though on paper it's actually not that bad, they just have not been able to put it together. It's kind of sad, but whatever. Gardner Minshew is a great excuse to tank for Trevor. They're thinking about shopping Leonard Fournette as well, so it's like they're really just trying to tank for Trevor and just not say it. And do I blame them? No, not at all. I mean, I would do it too. But still, they're just not in a very good position right now. Next week, Minnesota goes to Indianapolis, into the Dome. Indy is just a far superior team, in my opinion. Minnesota's getting old. That's their problem. They've done a lot of really good things, but they're just a developing team and an old team at the same time. So their best players are getting older, and then they have some young stars who are still developing. It's just, I don't think it's a very good position for Minnesota right now, and it's kind of sad because they have a lot of talent, but their good talent is getting worse, and then their young talent's starting to get better, and it's just gonna miss the overlap. I feel really bad for Minnesota because on paper, in a couple years' time, if you stop these their best players from aging, this could easily be Super Bowl contending team. But Indy's just a much better team overall. I think that Kirk Cousins, without Stephon Diggs, might have a much harder time dealing with a weaker secondary than he would have normally. The next week, the New York Jets goes to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is winning this game, guys. New York is it's a buns team. Sam Darnold shows up against good teams, but not that well. I don't have that much faith in good old Sam. He just really sucks. We'll talk about them when it comes their time, but Indianapolis, far superior team. No need to explain further. The next week, Indy's outside the Dome at Soldier Field against Nick Foles and the Bears. I think the Bears just have a super superior defense. Even though Phillip Rivers is going to have time to throw for the first time, I think Chicago's defense is going to put the pressure on, and the secondary is still super solid, and then Nick Foles is a game manager, and I think that there will be holes open in the secondary, enough for Chicago to dink and dunk their way to victory. Next week, similar situation here. Cleveland could honestly have one of the best lines in the offense. Best offensive lines in the NFL. So, you got to watch out. These guys might pull in Indianapolis, worst to first type scenario. Very solid talents that they drafted. Jedrick Wills brought in Jack Conklin. Could definitely be an insane roster this year, and they're super powered. The next week, Cincy goes to Indy. Cincy's offensive line still developing, still getting there. We'll see if Jonah Williams is actually the guy that they drafted him to be. And then Joe Burrow's still going to be super young. Defense is lackluster. Indy's going to take the cake. After a bye week, Indy goes into Detroit fully rested. And, Indy is just a much better team than Detroit right now. It's unfortunate to see how Detroit is kind of dying off. Matt Stafford's getting older. Like you see Marvin Jones is getting older. Kenny Galladay's a number one wide receiver still. Really solid team, but it's just not very competitive. And it's unfortunate to see very good talent wasted like Kenny Galladay. And then we'll see how their draft picks turn out. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to make them a threat to a lot of teams in the NFL. Next week, Baltimore fully rested goes into Indy, and Indy upsets. So this isn't like one that was like, oh, dude, Indy easily wins this one. That's not true at all. Baltimore should win this game. They're fully rested, extra week of preparation, and they're extremely solid. They even have Calais Campbell. I just totally remember that one. Like, I just remember that one today. Like, they're really freaking solid. So, I mean, Baltimore, they're going to go up against Indy, and I think Indy's going to take the cake, though. Indy's offensive line can hold up against that, and I think Phillip Rivers has a requisite offense to be able to face Lamar Jackson. And the defense, I think it's good enough. I think Malik Hooker is the X factor in this game. The next week, Indy goes into Tennessee, and I've been giving a little bit of love, a little bit of hate to Tennessee at the same time. I'm going to give this one to Tennessee. You're going to the South in Nashville. The air is muggy there, and they're going to be running the ball down your throat. It's just going to be very exhausting. It's going to be like you're used to being in a dome, and then you're going to a very muggy environment, and they're running it down your throat. You're going to get exhausted. This team's just not going to do well. Bottom line, I think that Derrick Henry is going to be the X factor in this game as well. The next week, Green Bay goes to Indianapolis. Indy's going to win this one. Indy has a far better defensive line, a comparable offensive line to Green Bay's pass rush, and then I think the pass attack is comparable to their pass defense. But Indy has a better secondary than Green Bay's offense. Kind of embarrassing to say that, but that situation's also kind of fucked. But next week, Tennessee goes into Indy. Indy gets their revenge. You don't have this awkward environment anymore with like this muggy ass weather. But you know, Indy's a very solid team. Very solid team. They could even win this game as well. This team, I could possibly see them. I could see them beating the Browns, possibly beating the Bears, beating Tennessee, possibly beating Pittsburgh. This team, like, scarily has some potential to be undefeated. Don't quote me on that one, but like there is the potential for this team to go undefeated if Phillip Rivers, like, has a resurgence as like the Hall of Fame type of quarterback he is. So very scary. This team is not talked about at all. This team and Arizona are like two teams I am huge fans of. So I mean, this is all dependent on Phillip Rivers, guys. If he sucks, we're flipping this game. We're flipping all kinds of games in here, man. Like, we're flipping this game as well. Phillip Rivers is a huge X factor. So we'll see how it goes. Next week, Indy goes into Houston. I've given way too much shit to my man, Deshaun Watson here. I think that he's going to find a way to win this game and put Phillip Rivers in his seat and say, like, you're not taking over my division that easily. I'm still going to show you that I could do some things, even though they're 3-7 right now. I think it's going to be an upset. I think it's going to be heavily reliant on Deshaun Watson. And then, this is no injury, so J.J. Watt's going to be here. We'll see how that works out. So, I mean, Houston's not a horrible team. It's just they're similar to Detroit. They're kind of wasting their talent because of the fact that they just are not very competitive. Next week, Indy goes into Vegas and upsets them. Indy is very solid, like, all around compared to Vegas. The pass rush of Vegas is nothing compared to Indy's offensive line. And Indy's pass rush is comparable to Vegas's offensive line. Both have very solid offenses, but Indy has a bit better of a defense. I think that'll give them the edge. The next week, Houston goes into Indy. We're giving this one to Indy. They're comfortable at home, making a playoff push right now, and I think they're going to take the cake. This was just an upset. Deshaun Watson can't, I think he's pretty magical, but I don't think he has that much magic in his pocket. The next week, Indy, I was about to say Indy goes to Vegas. Next week, Indy goes to Pitt, and, like, you're at Heinz Field. Pittsburgh's trying to make a playoff run. So are you, but according to this, they have nothing to worry about. They split with Tennessee here, and they're 3-2 in their own division, which they'll be 4-2. Hint, hint. there's not as much on the line as there is for Pittsburgh trying to make it in behind Cleveland, which they lost twice to. So yeah, there's some blood going in with Pittsburgh, and they're a super solid team, especially if they trade for Leonard Fournette, which I heard is an actual possibility. Next week, Jacksonville goes into Indianapolis. This is a no-brainer here. Jacksonville's going to be taken for that number 1 pick, and they're going to get it. So let me know what you guys think. 11-5 is a super solid record. I almost was thinking that they might have gotten a better one. I mean, they had an upset right here, but it's a kind of countered by this guy. But whatever. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. These videos have been starting to gain a little bit more traction, and I thank you guys so much for it. I'll see you on the far side. Peace.